Bienvenue, welcome to another property podcast. This one's called Property Matters, stars Hamish McClay of Search and Compare, and today's special guest, a friend of the show, Azara Olibukas of Nexa Law. We usually turn over and talk about topics that can affect people when they are in purchasing a house, conveyancing, or everything in between. But this is an interesting one, and I actually watched a television program last night, escapes what its name was, but I think it may have been on the Beeb, all to do with this topic. Today's topic is empty flats, full charges. Let's get going. Hamish McClay, take the lead.
Well, good afternoon to you all. As Gareth said, we like to sort of speak on topics, introduce topics that possibly many people aren't fully aware of. But it is very, very important and is impacting on more and more people, the kind of situation we found. It was interesting. My brother, he bought a caravan on one of these particular sort of sites, and he actually found that the management fees and the charges for it, when he wasn't there, he still had to pay for them. And he had it for a few years. And unfortunately, it just, the cost of having it there and allowing it to be there exceeded the value that you could put on the property. And whilst one can expect that possibly from sort of the caravan sort of type of thing, what happens in some of these flats that people are buying, which are bought, they do have conditions attached to them when people buy those flats. And at the time, it suits absolutely fine. It could be some elderly people particularly, or people who are sort of in warden-controlled areas or warden support. So there's all sorts of things of that particular sort of nature. And unfortunately, built into the leases, because many of them are leasehold, and to make it even more complicated, and how the heck Zara figures these out, they're shared leases as well, it gets so very, very complicated. And when that person passes and they leave, as they very, very often will, that property to their a family member, the family member has the property absolutely fine. However, they do have to pay the maintenance costs while it's sat there for not receiving any value of themselves from that maintenance sort of cost. So Zara is the one that's the expert here, but it is something of a warning to sort of people that life cannot necessarily be as easy as they would like it to be, even when they try to do something, simply say, right, I can leave this to my family.
I have found where the program was. It was on the BBC. It was actually last night on News and 6 and News at 10. And it was the segment was called Families Unable to Sell Inherited Retirement Flats, identified as a BBC News item. And it's also under Apple TV under the title Season 1, Episode 1. There we go. Power to the people, Zara. Right. So what's your thoughts on this?
Well, this has been ongoing for a long time. You know, back when I was in high street practice, coming to nearly 15 years ago, the area where I worked, there was a lot of retirement flats built. And then a few years, what I was finding was even back then, you're looking 2012, 2015, the families that had bought these properties were still struggling to sell them even back then. I've got a brand new block at the end of my road that's been built specifically as retirement flats. You know, there's still empty properties in there from brand new. It's not been sold and it's been there for a few years now. But, you know, with these, you've got to remember they're all leasehold and you're tied up with service charge issues, cladding issues. And with the older ones specifically, sorry, not older ones, I meant the flats that are meant for retirement, sometimes they include provisions for care. So they have somebody on site who's there to keep an eye on people, and you've got to, you know, your service charge includes paying for them. And they try and sell it to you that you don't have to pay anything whilst you're alive. But when you sell it, the number of years that you've been there adds up as to how much you'll lose from the property.
Well, I did a quick research, and it appears that there are over 10,000 long-term empty or hard-to-sell retirement flats, privately owned retirement blocks in England and Wales.
Yeah, you've got to pay a specified percentage of the sale price,
right,
to the people that own the building, in lieu of service charges. So you've got that kind of upset balance of not being able to do works until you've got money from whoever's died, and if they're struggling to sell, you're going to be waiting even longer. Some of these leases do have ground rent in them as well, rising ground rents,
right.
Which for someone whose parents bought it, you might be sitting there struggling to understand why the parent bought that property in the first place.
Please educate me a little bit, Zara. Didn't they just recently put a cap on ground rent?
Yeah, but these are existing leases. So they would have put the rising ground rents in back historically. So you would have, if it was every 10 years, you might have already had a rise in ground rent. So the cap is coming in, but it's not immediate effect, is it?
Right. So for the moment they've still got the rising ground rent. When the cap does come in, does it all knock it back to 250 or not?
It's supposed to, but then you wonder what else they'll try and get some more money, because these have all been set up to make money, haven't they?
Yes, exactly.
It's not that we care about you, old person, we'd like to look after you. It's how can we fleece you for as much as you've got, so then there's not much left. And my dad flat out refused to buy a flat. So we're not even talking about retirement properties. We're talking about older people wanting to downsize.
Right.
If they buy a flat to live in, there was a lady who's retired on a pension. Her service charge is £6,000 a year.
Yes, it seems absurd.
So it's all to do with the leasehold ownership and exploitation of that system. She expected not to have to be paying that much per annum to look after her building, but yet she's found herself in a position where she's not working, and somehow she's got to find that money to pay to live there, otherwise her flat can be repossessed.
Hamish, it appears to me that there are 10,000 is 10,000, but there are a fair old number of homes that have been sat there for years empty because they can't fill them.
Well, there's the other complication as well, and we only know what we know. Those are the reported ones.
Yes,
they've been able to sort of gather the information on. There will be an awful lot more, and there will be a lot of people who are sort of a transitional, who wanted to actually sort of get out of that. Because as Zara sort of explained, it's not just for the elderly. There could be flats that people are actually sort of in with some of these comprehensive leasehold arrangements, which puts you in all sorts of challenges, which is why it's essential. And of course, we keep forgetting about this. We do need to bang on about it. It's absolutely vital that people put themselves in a position when they're buying a property that they know what the problems are with it. When I say problems, it's every property is different, and we will vary throughout the country. But there are some which are going to be seriously problematical. And one of the things Zara looks at when she's looking out on behalf of a client is what happens should that client want to move, or in certain when that client sort of passes. What's the value of that particular sort of property? Is there anything that's going to make that a challenge? Right. And this is where, in fact, Zara's expertise is absolutely great. But we've also find she will express these limitations to people, and people aren't necessarily interested in the limitations. They just want to get into the property, which is a great shame, really, because it's so important. But I think a lot of people are expecting it to be quite simple. And of course, I would imagine, I'm sure Zara can tell us, does it become more expensive as a consequence of all of these different sort of citations, ideas, and complexities that surround this particular type of property, which could be inexpensive to buy if you look at the actual price to buy, seemed like a great deal at the time. However, is it such a great deal?
Well, that's a good question. Zara, I've noticed that there are prices on these kind of properties, slightly restricted properties. They are dropping the prices through the floor. I saw one for £40,000 with all the restrictions, of course.
They are dropping because people don't want to buy them with all the extra baggage that comes with them. I acted for a client a few years ago. He was sold a shared ownership older person's lease. It was a house. Him and his wife were perfectly happy there. But he did get himself in a little bit of a knot because he wasn't told at the time when he purchased that he might have needed a lease extension. And so all of that came out of the woodworks, and I managed to secure him a lease extension. But it's things like only through experience and from hearing other people's issues that you can put together comprehensive advice. A lot of conveyancers won't tell people buying flats, make sure you keep a reserve, because it won't be quick to sell. Anything leasehold, it will have to, the obligations don't fall away just because you've died. You still have to carry on paying until that property can be sold to somebody else. Going back to poor Amanda Walker, her family potentially still, if they've still got hold of her flat because it can't be sold, they might have to find a way to fit the bill to fix the building. So we're not just talking about the elderly, we're talking about anybody who buys leasehold.
So leasehold, there's a whole discussion about its potential abolition, yes?
Yes.
And I mean, is it just pie in the sky, or is this a realistic thing that's potentially going to happen?
Well, the freeholders aren't going to go down without a fight. Let's just say that.
Because of their license to print money, is that the reason?
Yes and no, but also, there's a lack of awareness as to, people managing their own buildings. So, I've come across perfectly very well-run residence-run management companies, but if you're explaining that to a first-time buyer, young person in their early 30s, they've got life going, they want to be doing this and that. They haven't got time to be managing a building, which can be a full-time job in itself. You will need somebody to oversee this. You will need good management in place. You can appoint somebody else to do it for you, but it's having that choice to get rid of the people who look after the building for you, if they don't play ball. Common hold, I was literally just sitting on a course on common hold. It looks attractive, but we need to find where the loopholes are going to be, because the developers just want to find a way to keep on making money. And we've still got the issue of these buildings not being built to standard. So one way or another, however much you pay for it, you might still end up paying extra for defective workmanship.
I mean, common hold has been around for quite some time, has it not?
Yes, and it's because lenders don't understand it. There's not very many lenders who will lend it.
You don't hear about it much, but I know that you told me before that it's been around for quite some time. Why has it suddenly come to the fore as being an alternative process?
It's because of all the exploitation that's going on with leasehold. So all the campaigners think that getting rid of the tenure is going to solve their problems, but it's not going to solve the problem, because it all starts with the people who build our buildings. They're not doing a good enough job. They're probably going to fall down in the next storm or something. and you've bought in good faith expecting insurance warranties to pay out, and it's just like any other form of insurance. They'll do what they can to deny a claim.
Hamish, it's quite amazing how unpopular the whole leasing system has become. But as Zara just said, it's like leaping from one frying pan into another frying pan.
Well, the trouble is, as things stand, we can't get away from it. Popularised, yes, and I think where in Australia it's much more popular. It's sort of said, "Oh, this is great in Australia. Why don't we do it here?" But because a lot of the buildings in Australia don't have the historical issues, and on top of that, they don't have this historical methods that go back as we have for hundreds of years. But it's, interesting to know. Hopefully, my colleague, who himself inherited a flat from his mother and got caught up in so many different things, which in fact is lost goodness knows how much money. Only he could actually sort of tell us. Hopefully we'll be able to get to him on one of our programs sort of later on to explain exactly what went on with his and why, in the notion that he's decided the only thing he can do is sell it, and obviously it's going to be nothing like the same sort of value. But the interesting thing is his work, he does himself work on properties. And one of the comments that he made to me is he said, it's unbelievable the state that some of these places are built in, because he will go in and sort of replace kitchens and various other bits and pieces during the house. And he sort of says it is just unbelievable, the poor quality of the initial build. And when he actually sort of comes to put his work in, which is quality work, it really is quite an interesting, if you like, quite an interesting comparison, comparing his quality of workmanship to the builder's quality of workmanship. But it is a frightening experience sort of altogether. Some of these people get, and they want to get on and live. And it's even worse, of course, if somebody wants to get out of that sort of small flat which they had. Never mind the sort of elderly. But of course, it does make it very, very difficult for the elderly too, because of the complexity. Well, and if you're on a fixed income, which pensioners are, and those management keep going up. I mean, if you're on a pension and that's it, I mean, like Zara explained there, if you're paying 6,000, and that is not the norm, there are some management fees even higher than that.
As Zara has pointed out to me privately, and you won't want to chip in on this, Zara, Australia still have the same problems with the developers. It's just changed location, the same problems.
Yeah. They still got the problem with the developers, and then it's a question of who's going to pay for it all. In Australia, they with the strata, the common holders the people that own the flats have to pay for it. There's none of this consultation, what's reasonable, which is what I've just learned, is that with common hold, there's none of this kind of reasonableness test. It's this has been incurred, you have to pay for it. What they've taken out is the forfeiture, which is if you don't pay your bills, we could take your flat away. But if that threat has been taken away, if you've got a block of, say, 5 or 6, one person doesn't pay, but you need to get that work done, it's going to be left up to the others to chip in for that person. And then how do you get the money back? You have to wait till the property's sold. They might not sell for another 10 years. Who knows? Yes. So It's that cash flow problem, as I call it.
It does sound messy. Hamish, thank you very much for bringing this podcast together. Would you care to take us home?
Right, indeed. And we would love to be able to come up with a simple solution. The only solution, I think, is speak to somebody like Zara, and she'll endeavour as best she can to sort of point you in the right direction. But I mean, looking at this idea of sort of common hold, lovely story. I think I might have mentioned it before. My brother over in Reading, series of garages there owned by, I think there were 12 people, the usual sort of thing, 6 garages. It just so happened that the drainage went up, and and basically two of those garages were flooding, and they needed to do something about the repairing work to this one particular sort of train, and only nobody outside of those two people whose garages flooded had any interest whatsoever in repairing it. So they had to put up their own sort of find ways of sticking things up. But of course, it was never a simple solution. You need to get all of those people to agree. So that is not necessarily a simple solution, much as we would like it to be. But there are better ways than we have with the leasehold situation, which is another subject which will go on, and we will speak about that again sometime soon as well.
Yeah, this leasehold situation, as Zara says, is still watch and wait, I guess. But in the meantime, she's genning up on Commonhold. The rest of us are waiting in the wings. As ever, bring to you topics which you may not have thought about. I hope it sparks interest. Please try and remember in these difficult times to keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and for goodness sake, look after their mental health. Surround yourself with people who know better than you, and you will do well. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.